I welcome you all again in the second session of the ninth day of this 2-week refresher course. In this refresher course, all you know that different scholars have given their scholarships on different subjects, primarily related to history. Many of them were from different backgrounds, different disciplines. Today also we have invited a speaker, an eminent professor, Dr. Devesh Vijay, who have worked not only in history but in sociology as well. Dr. Devesh Vijay has written many books related to European history, and also he has written books on the sociological aspect, especially his studies have been related with the urban and rural economies and different spheres of these societies. Dr. Devesh Vijay, being not only the traditional historian, but he has adopted many new methods and approaches that will be reflected in his lecture. Today also we see he will be speaking on the mentalities, which some nuances of these mentality have been used by the Annales school in the past, but very few scholars in history have used this. So we would see the use of mentalities in history writing. Sir will make us understand that how the shared memories and mentalities and things related with these terms are very crucial in history writing. So I cordially invite Dr. Devesh Vijay. Before that, I request Dr. Jeevan to please come on stage and give honor to Dr. Devesh Vijay by felicitating him with a gift.
Sir, welcome, sir, please.
Now I cordially invite Dr. Devesh Vijay to speak and enlighten us about the subject. Sir.
Thank you, Vikas. First of all, I think I must share a secret with you, although it's an open secret. Vikas has been my very dear student. I'm extremely proud of him, and I wish him all the best, of course. Also pleased to be here at Ramanujan, which has been contributing so much to this FDP mission. Because history especially, I think other subjects also, but history is in a kind of churning. Old convictions, old assumptions, old assertions are being questioned daily. There's a new ideological climate in the country now. Simultaneously, we are having NEP, new education policy, even recruitment procedure I've heard is changing now. So there's a lot of churning, and FDPs have a tremendous role to play in this situation to bring thinking minds together, learners and researchers, and make the best of the change that is coming. I shall start with a confession. The title is there that this is not so much detailed information from my narrow research area, which happens to be the rural change in colonial and post-colonial India. Instead, what I'm going to do today is talk about some conceptual and theoretical issues in history writing. So it will be good to start with by explaining the key concepts in my title. What is meant by explanation? What is meant by history, and what is historical explanation, and what is meant by, of course, mentalities, which is the key term I'm going to talk about today. Explanation refers to the elucidation of how something has originated, come about, or the elucidation of its persisting features. This is very different in science and social sciences. In sciences, we can identify what are called causes, which will be universally playing in the creation of any entity that we are focusing on. For example, a particular temperature, whether it is Japan or India, will lead to boiling of water into steam. It's universal. In social sciences, there are no universal causes. The same outcome, for example, a revolution, can emerge out of a combination of different sets of conditions in France, in Germany, and so on. Okay? So it is better to talk in social sciences not of causes, unless we qualify the term. Instead, we should say helping factors. Yes, there are helping factors which repeatedly occur behind some outcomes, incidents, or changes in structures and institutions, etc. But they are not invariable, as in the physical world, which sciences study. So instead of causes, we call them helping factors. This we should keep in mind. But among these helping factors, there are 2-3 levels. On top, like in the ocean, there are waves, which are events. Then there are currents, which are institutions. And deeper than that are long-term structures of society, like the caste structure in India, or the class structure, say, in capitalism, and so on. And in these long-term structures, something which is often left out from description, and which is very difficult to describe, are mentalities. Annales had pioneered this kind of work. From Marc Bloch to Lucien Febvre, Braudèl's massive study of the Mediterranean in the age of Philip II, they went into the study of changes not only at the level of events, which kings, which battles succeeded what, but how structures changed, how social class structure changed over time, how the religious institutions changed, and deeper than that, how mentalities changed over time. This is the most difficult to graph. Now, what is meant by mentalities? By mentalities, I am referring to widely shared values, beliefs, loyalties, and their patterns in a community. The word widely shared is crucial. Everyone we know has a mentality. We all have attitudes, values, beliefs, etc. in our head. They are invisible, but they are expressed in how we behave. Okay? Jats behave in a particular way. Japanese queue up for the train in a particular way. It expresses their mentalities, values, and attitudes. Okay? So mentalities are reflected in behavior only. We can't see them directly. They are imprints inside our heads. But historically and socially significant mentalities are not those which are peculiar to a person, but the widely shared values, beliefs, loyalties, etc. Okay? How can we say they are widely shared? Because just by knowing that somebody is a Pathan, we can anticipate how he or she is going to behave. If we know that person A sitting in a particular room is a Japanese, we know they are not going to shout while or cry aloud. They grieve also without shedding tears. That is in their habit and customs. It is not considered honorable, for example, to loudly cry, which is common, say, in our. Similarly, in the weddings, the behavior patterns are different. So just by knowing somebody is a Jat or a Pathan or a Japanese or a German, some idea can be gained of their behavior patterns, which reflect ultimately their value patterns, their belief patterns, their mentalities. So this is what is meant by mentalities. I've just given this example of a Christian wedding. Their style is very different and expresses a different kind of mentalities and attitudes than, say, a Punjabi wedding. बीच वाला ना? It is not changing. इधर point करना. Okay. There's some jam. Just check out. Okay. Or if you can use the keyboard, आप change कर दीजिए. Now, let me also make a brief comment on what I see history main focus should be. See, we are very familiar with historians specializing in a particular area and collecting sources to arrive at some corroborated information which can help us describe the past about that area. Okay. We look for corroborated information through various sources that can be searched out. In this process, what happens is that our descriptions become too tied closely to the sources that are available to us. For example, we don't get very many sources on mentalities or social structure, etc., as compared to the politics of that period. Because politicians were in power, they got their histories written, or people wrote about them. Those sources are more easily available. So we write more of the political history. Whereas history should be the study of change. We don't describe the whole past. In any case, the whole past is not available to us. We select from available information, corroborated information, to describe the past. This description should not be driven only by the dictates of the sources we have found. Just because Akbar's Akbarnama is available to us, we should focus on all the battles that he fought and so on, and his administration, etc. Our questions should emerge from the curiosity about how things changed. Akbar, of course, made a central contribution to the elite culture by tussling with the issue of Deen-e-Ilahi and harmony between different religious groups at the top. This is his important, here is change. But we don't have to describe all the battles that he fought, all how many soldiers died in which battle and so on, which his sources will give us. But our focus should be on the study of change. This is what makes history interesting. I don't know if you are aware, which is the book which has sold the most by a historian. Can you name? Yuval Harari's Sapiens. It has sold 25 million copies. And I would strongly advise, although he's actually a professor of history at Tel Aviv, but by focusing on change and focusing not just on politics, but the deeper structures of society and how they changed, he has been able to write such a fascinating book which has engaged readers. 65 languages it has been translated. So that is the kind of historical perspective which has inspired me, and I am drawing your attention to. Now, see, there are a number of questions associated with mentalities and the role they play or the help they give in explaining historical events. I won't be able to take up all the questions, but at least we should know what all these questions are. First of all, we have to define what are mentalities. How are they linked with associated terms like culture, consciousness, meaning, which anthropologists use, discourses, etc. Thirdly, we have to understand how mentalities emerge in a community. How are these patterns formed? What factors shape mentalities? Then, since mentalities are not visible on the surface, how do we interpret mentalities? This is a very important question in the study of mentalities. How can we reliably offer accounts of mentalities peculiar to different communities? Okay. Then we have to see what role they play in shaping other events in society, okay, in that region. Then I'll also in the next second part of my lecture take the example of Indian and South Asian mentalities and what are some common misconceptions, some romanticizations, and what are the real attributes of mentalities that this region expresses in its events, mass action, elections, etc., etc. Okay. And lastly, I'll just critically look at what are the problem areas in the mentalities in our country and what role teachers can play, media persons can play in addressing these gaps and problem areas. Next slide, please. Now, let us see in what way mentalities are important. And this raises the question, if they are important, why have they been so neglected? You must be aware that apart from Annales, there are some historians, but very few historians who go into describing mentalities. Principal names are, apart from Annales, Peter Burke. Peter Burke, Popular Culture in Early Modern Europe, is a grand book. But otherwise, even grand historians like Hobsbawm doesn't have a section on mentalities. He has a section on music, on arts in modern age, and at the level of world history, but very little on mentalities. Similarly, I think one of the best historians India has had, Sumit Sarkar. His recent book, Modern Times, very nicely goes much beyond politics into social change, into the evolution of Bhadralok, into the middle class sociability, very fine descriptions of arts, literature, printing press, and etc. All the change that it brought about. But there's no section on mentalities. I think even Romila Thapar, apart from one or two lectures, I don't remember she has a focus much on mentality. Why? No, ideally we should have a atlas of mentalities, just as we have, a word map of GDP, say, in different colors according to the level of GDP. Similarly, we should have, say, in Japan, the notions of honor about work ethics are very high. The same is not true in some parts of Africa. Okay, so this kind of atlas ideally should be there, but that will be a very large project. I think several universities will have to get together to do it. But at least those people who are specializing in a particular era, in a particular region, they should focus apart from, trade union strikes, what happened with the coming of Gandhi, also on the mentalities of that period and the changes that were happening in mentalities. Very little is available on that. Although, as I'll mention, say subaltern studies has tried to focus, but they have been very repetitive about one particular theme. Instead of mapping out differences in mentalities across regions in India, etc., much of cultural Marxists, also subaltern studies, have been only repeating one particular theme, that is that resistance existed in the subaltern consciousness along with hegemony. So it gets repeated in Shahid Amin, Gyan Pandey, and so on. Their focus has been largely on this. But my submission is that mentalities help us explain a lot in terms of at the level of individual, community, as well as larger nation, regional conflicts, etc. Some examples I'll give how mentalities are very important, and without them we can't explain important historical phenomena. For example, let's say the French Revolution, one of the major events in history. Can we explain French Revolution just by referring to the fact that there was feudalism, there was a lot of exploitation? Exploitation was much more in Eastern Europe. but the revolution happened in France. Or can we explain it by reference to the rise of the bourgeoisie? Now, many historians are saying, in fact, the bourgeoisie was not so evolved at the time of the French Revolution, and it was divided between both the king's side and the side of the rebels. And in any case, bourgeoisie was much more developed in England. England did not have any revolution, despite having the biggest industrial revolution early and having a big working class. So this class matrix does not explain why French Revolution happened in such a big revolution happened in 1789 in France only. For that, we will have to go into mentalities. What does that tell us? Look at the newspapers that were being published on the eve of the French Revolution. The noise they were making about the importance of the public opinion and the king's absolutist rule and the rumors that circulated around the queen, Antoinette, etc. That intellectual and mental climate that had been created, that is what explains the anger in the peasantry which led to the jacqueries and the murders of so many feudal lords, etc. But nothing of that kind in Britain, where deference was more common regarding the lords. Okay? So in fact, this comes out beautifully in Charles Dickens' famous novel, A Tale of Two Cities. He contrasts London and Paris. And the anger that is there in the Paris taverns and, beer shops and that he notices is in marked contrast to the working class environment in London. So, similarly, let's take one more example. Say, Gandhi was extraordinarily successful in mobilizing the Indian people, including for the first time the rural mass. That was his immense contribution. Before that, Tilak was trying, Lajpat Rai was there, Aurobindo Ghosh. So all these people were trying. The Home Rule movement had practically failed. Why did Gandhi alone succeed? Now, can we explain it only with reference to the price rise, which in any case was not huge? Or as A.R. Desai says, the peasantry was disaffected, or the working class Indian movement had started after the First War, etc., etc. See, these conducive conditions were available to other leaders also, who were all trying to awaken the Indian mass. But only Gandhi was successful. This can be, I will propose, explained only by referring to the saintliness of Gandhi, which had a very big fit with the value system of the Indian illiterate poor mass. The place of the saint, which Gandhi managed to convey best, and he actually realized it, he actually practiced it, it was not a sham. That is what explains his continuity and the hold he had on the mass movement. He could withdraw it, he could start it at his command. So, and this can only be explained with the help of mentalities. Okay, I already referred to the fact that, I said that academics and intellectuals have been a little inadequate in focusing on mentalities. But surprisingly, people are not that way. You ask anybody why certain things, why are Gujaratis best in business? Why are there so few Bengali entrepreneurs? They will refer to their mentalities. They take into account. So, commoners are not so averse to explaining things with the help of mentalities patterns, as social scientists have been. Now let us raise the question, why have social scientists been so averse or hesitant or inadequate in explaining the mentality structures in different regions and accounting for them while explaining different historical phenomena? As I said, French Revolution, Gandhi, or you'll say there is extant literature on why Germany was much more ahead of France, etc., in the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. It started in Britain, but later on Germany surged ahead. Now, there is a very big literature on this issue, what helped Germany move so fast. But none of the historians like Treblecock or Hobsbawm they don't refer to mentalities question at all. But I would say, isn't it fact that the German working class and the work culture that existed in Germany explains a lot as compared to, say, Spain, where siesta or a midday nap is a common feature. But a German worker, when it comes to the shop floor, would just work, not even talk. So these working habits or mentalities explain also why particular outcomes like rapid economic development occurred in Germany at such a level as in no other country. France was also trying, Russia was trying, but what helped Germany was also, apart from, and remember, it came very late, it got unified only in 1870. And yet, after 1870, it takes over most other countries except Britain in trade, etc., in some areas. But and what helped was, I am saying, mentalities which are prominent, prevalent, common in that country also. That's a factor. But I've read all this literature on German industrialization. No historian of economic historian refers to this. That's, I think, a gap. Now, I was raising this question: what explains this hesitancy? Why do social scientists, historians especially, not focus on mentalities adequately? See, first of all, there are 3-4 reasons. First of all, mentalities are difficult to map. It is not like counting GDP of a country, which is measurable. Mentalities are not measurable. They are not tangible. Okay? We can only make broad assessments about them and their contrasts across regions by looking at recurring behavior patterns. Where are mentalities reflected? They are reflected in recurring behavior patterns of collectives, of groups of people. Okay? Now, so first reason is that it is a difficult issue, theme to study. Secondly, mentalities, second reason why there has been hesitancy in focusing on them, I think, is that it is a very sensitive issue. See, it is easy to say that Punjab agriculture was more bountiful than, say, Rajasthan. But the moment you say that Punjabis express more valor in their behavior than Rajasthani, it's a little sensitive. Huh? Because pride is associated with identity and people can get pricked at that level. So it is a sensitive issue. That could be one, but I don't think these difficulty or sensitivity can be a reason to prevent a scholar from entering an area of research. In fact, that should be seen as a challenge, and with more vigor we should invest in research in that area. Okay. Actually, the deeper reason behind hesitancy in this area has been that there are certain notions, dominant theoretical prejudices. One is positivism. Positivism, you must be aware, remained dominant in social sciences under the influence of French sociologists, etc., from 19th century times, because they wanted to model social science on natural sciences. So their attempt was to measure, to focus on tangible issues and create almost mathematical, laws, etc., according to which society they asserted behaves. Okay. Now, mentalities will not fit into this methodological approach easily. It cannot be mathematically measured, etc., or compared across regions. So positivism is one reason. Another reason was what is called vulgar Marxism, or Marxism that overemphasized the economic factor. So in general, they were initially not giving considerable credit to culture And within culture, especially to mentalities. Mentalities is one aspect of culture. Culture actually includes in some notions fine arts. Say when you say that our college has a cultural program today, so you're talking about the dance program, the music program, and these are the fine arts. This is one definition of culture. But culture also includes cultural institutions, a whole gamut of them: religion, education, media, ideologies, folklore, even linguistic structures, which all affect our thinking and they shape mentalities. So these are cultural institutions. And thirdly, the core of culture is the values and belief patterns of a community. And these are what I'm calling mentalities. Okay? So, two ideologies I have told you, or theoretical approaches which obstructed the development of mentality research: positivism, Marxism. Later, Marxists became cultural Marxists, the Frankfurt School and so on. Even postmodernism emerged, which gave a lot of attention to culture. But here again, mentalities got neglected, the way Annales studied them, in specifics. These schools were more interested in looking at working class consciousness and resistance movements, etc. So the real task of highlighting why Bombay labor was different from Calcutta labor, or Bihari labor in Calcutta, okay, or Hindus and Muslims fought against each other from direct action days, etc. This requires explanation of mentalities which goes beyond the paradigm of working class consciousness. Since cultural Marxists were more focused on working class consciousness idea, they neglected the actual specifics of mentalities across religious groups, across regional groups, across linguistic groups, etc. Okay? So these are some of the reasons. Next slide, please. This is, of course, Karl Marx. Next slide. This is Mark Bloch, one of the persons who pioneered the study of mentalities. Next slide. Next slide. These are the questions which I have already narrated that are relevant to the study of mentalities, and I am focusing on 5 or 6 of them. Yeah. Now let us see how we must interpret mentalities and how are mentalities formed. As I said, mentalities are invisible, intangible, immeasurable. They are only indirectly expressed in how people behave. But what we have to see is not individuals' mentalities. Since we are looking at historical explanations, we have to look at widely shared mentalities. And where will we get them? I'll give you some examples. I use the term praxis, or what by that I mean considered action. Mentalities are reflected in our considered action, not ritual action. For example, what is ritual action? What is considered action? Say, suppose you are sitting in a wedding, and the feras that the wedding couple go through, there are some mantra which are recited, and this is ritual action. This will not reflect their current mentalities. Divorce rate may be going up, but the mantras express something else totally different. Okay. Where will we get the mentalities? From considered action. Wedding gossip will be a better reflection. Wedding time gossip will be a better reflection of mentalities rather than the rituals that are performed at that time. Okay? So we must, to understand somebody's mind, you will not so much look at what they do ritually as commanded by custom. Okay? That doesn't reflect their current mind. Their current mind will be reflected in the strategy that person evolves to say outcompete say a competitor in a market, or considered action is a better reflection of mentalities than ritual action. This distinction should be made. This is very important because, unfortunately, anthropology, whose main focus is on values, beliefs, etc., have been generally looking at ritual action. You must be familiar, an American anthropologist will come to the village and they will look at, the arti, and they will derive assumptions about, say, Hindu belief patterns from arti. But what today's generation is doing and thinking is not very faithfully reflected from arti. They are at the same time going to the disco. They are at the same time having their rave parties. Okay, so arti will not faithfully reflect what their actual mentalities are. That is only ritual action. Okay, so this important distinction, unfortunately, most anthropologists have got into this trap. They come to a village. There's a famous description of Holi by Malcolm Marriott from Vrindavan. Now, or Clifford Geertz, a famous anthropologist, he derives notions of Indonesian, thought patterns, mentalities, etc., from their cockfight. By detailed description of, there's a famous essay on the cockfight match, say, in Java. Now, these are, I'm suggesting, not as much of a good, they are not good mirrors of minds and mentalities as considered action, what people actually do in difficult situations. That is where their values, beliefs, tastes, etc. get reflected. And second thing is that we should look at especially the group response to an individual's action. I'll give you one example which will make it clear. Say, I was studying a village and I was staying with a Dalit family. And there was an interesting conversation one morning. People said that, वो मास्टर जी देखो कितने भले आदमी हैं, वो प्रैक्टिकल बताया उन्होंने मेरठ कॉलेज में, आज मैं सुपरवाइज़र हूँ, एग्जामिनर हूँ, तो किसी का भाई कोई पहचान का हो तो बता देना हमको, किसी की मदद करनी हो. तो the groups that agreed and they said when he left कि ये देखो कितने भले आदमी हैं. तो this notion of personal goodness, virtue, reflects in the group's response to the individual's statement. Okay, so this is how collective mentalities should be our focus in group's response to individuals' behavior. Or say, let me give one more example from history. How do we, this I had observed in an anthropological method, because I'm an observer there. I observed this conversation. And I then drew some conclusion about their value system, in which public laws are not as important as kinship loyalty. Okay. How do we apply the same method in history? By focusing on reported incidents in which people took certain action. For example, Akbar walked barefoot to the dargah of Salim Chishti to be blessed with a son. Okay? And he had a crowd moving behind him. Doesn't it reflect about a particular mentality that, a peer's blessing can get you a son? And not only Akbar is believing that, the whole throng with him is believing in that. Okay? This is how we get at a collective mentality. Similarly, there is a reported incident, Babar, broke all the wine glasses to appeal to the soldiers who were otherwise urging him to leave India. Okay. So, before the battle of Khanwa, this is reported. So, this is again a good example of how people's response to a certain action becomes a good reflection of the mentalities of those times. Okay? So, this is about interpretation of mentalities. Now, let's raise the question, how are mentalities formed? Okay. Just as an individual's mentalities, values, beliefs, etc., are formed, first of all, with their the psyche with which they are born, the health they have, etc. Then their life experiences, and then their socialization experience, the way they are socialized, the school they go to, the kind of mothering they get, and so on. So all these shape an individual's mentality. Similarly, a group's mentality are shaped first of all by the ecology and the historical experience that it has been through. For example, Punjab. This will clarify. Punjab has experienced lots of invasions, and that has created a certain attitude build up to war, to their values regarding what is most virtuous. Is courage more important or arts are more important? Okay, you will see a contrast between Punjab and Bengal. For Bengalis, artistic accomplishment may be more important than physical courage. Pathans and Punjab, the reverse. So their historical experience shapes the emergence of mentality patterns. And lastly, what directly shapes values, beliefs, loyalties, etc., are what are called cultural institutions, or some anthropologists call them symbol systems. I would say better term is cultural institutions. I just named 6 of them: religion, education system, media, folklore, then socialization practices, the way babies and children are brought up, and lastly, ideologies. So these are cultural institutions which directly address minds and shape mentalities. Okay, so this is how mentalities are shaped. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now I will dwell a little on certain complexities in the study of mentalities. See, first of all, as I've already mentioned, no individual is completely programmed by its group's mentalities or value pattern. Okay. Mentalities are only a loose web in which we all reside, and we ourselves make this web. Okay. That is why all individuals are unique to some extent. They only share mentalities to a certain extent. This is one complexity about mentalities. Secondly, mentalities are a large spectrum. See, I mentioned 3, actually there are 6 segments: values, beliefs, loyalties, also tastes or desire patterns are different across communities. For example, in say among Pathans, their notion of honor, not showing the back in a battle, is much more important than say daily pleasures. Okay, so desire patterns can also be different in intensity. Okay, values, beliefs, loyalties. Loyalties are identities. What kind of identities are forceful? Say, is caste identity or professional identity, and so on. That can be different in different communities. And lastly, traits can be different. Traits means what? Psychological, syndromes or behavior patterns. For example, in certain communities, loud wailing at the time of grieving or a loss is considered good. We must express our grief loudly. Say, at the death in a, say, a Punjabi family, or the trait may be very different, say, in Germany or Sweden, where even showing the tears is considered embarrassing. Okay, so these are psychological traits. Similarly, aggressiveness or very civil behavior, they can be as different across communities. So this is the spectrum of mentalities, which have 6 important segments. Okay. Now, all these 6 segments actually play out at 3 levels: conscious, subconscious, and covert. See, we have a subconscious. This is, of course, plain psychology. But within the conscious realm, there is one thinking which we express before others. This is our overt thinking. But there's a lot that goes on which we hide from others, which is conscious, but we hide from others. So mentalities should be studied. We don't go into, because we are not psychologists, we don't go into the subconscious. But within the consciousness segment, we need to look at both covert thinking and overt thinking. Okay. This is another complexity regarding mentalities. I hope I am clear. This is all very abstract, but let me know at this point. This is not like general history, which is a narration of facts in a chronology. But am I clear? Okay. This is slightly abstract. If it is at any point you find some lack of clarity, do stop me. And those who are online, I'm addressing them also. Please do raise any query if you find any obfuscation or lack of clarity at any point. Now, next slide, please. Another important issue worth remembering is that cultures are durable, they have long-term continuities, but they are not changeless. And they are not uniform. Within each culture, there will be subcultures. Let us say we take India as, one culture. But within India, there will be a Punjabi subculture, there will be a Bengali subculture, Hindu and Muslim subcultures. Okay. How do we distinguish between what is subculture and what is culture? This is a point worth noting. This requires a little attention. How do we identify whether this is a subculture or a culture? That means that, say, if you value something differently, you are in 2 different subcultures. Suppose there is a Muslim and a Hindu, and for a Muslim, say, eating beef is okay, for a Hindu it is taboo. So these are 2 different subcultures because they value the same thing very differently, but they understand each other. That is why they belong to the same culture. When you are not able to understand a ritual or an action, then you are from a different culture. Suppose a Japanese comes here to, say, a Jat village, and Japanese are very reticent. They don't laugh loud. They hardly smile, and this reticence will be interpreted by the community as coldness or prejudice. Okay. So there is a lack of intelligibility here. When this happens, 2 different cultures are coming together. Okay. But when you are able to understand each other, but value occurrences, habits, actions, etc., very differently, then you are different subcultures. Okay, I hope I'm clear now. What is subculture and what is culture?
So thank you very much for the session. We will now take the break for 10 minutes and then we will resume again. Thank you.
So in this second part of the present lecture, I will skip over some of the fine details which remain to be discussed about the complexities of mentalities, and instead come to the next segment, which is identifying the most prominent features and peculiarities of Indian culture or mentalities in India. See, I am using the term culture and mentalities as substitutes occasionally because mentalities is not very commonly used. Culture is very well used, and I consider mentalities as the core of culture. As I said, culture is more than mentalities. It also includes arts, literature, philosophy, etc. And it also includes cultural institutions, which I named. But the core of culture is mentalities. And it refers to our values, beliefs, tastes, etc. So, when we talk about Indian culture, first of all, let us keep in mind that we can actually focus at 4 levels. The South Asian unity, okay, there are certain shared features at the level of the entire subcontinent. So there is a South Asian unity, then there is Indian specificity within that, and within that there are regional variations, and then some important variations across religious groups and classes also. So at 4 levels we can look at the cultural matrix in this area. Secondly, we should also remember, to begin with, that there are some mistaken, even false assertions that are commonly made regarding Indian culture. I'll give examples. Secondly, there are assertions which are not false but highly romanticized. We shall very objectively examine and differentiate them. Third category of assertions regarding Indian culture and mentalities are those that are not wrong but often misplaced and misunderstood. And lastly, of course, there are assertions which are entirely valid. So let us first look at those assertions which are commonly made about Indian culture that are actually not true. One is that we were the Vishwa Guru. We were extraordinarily brilliant in our sciences and mathematics and engineering, etc. No doubt, we have great accomplishments to cite from our ancient as well as medieval times, especially ancient times, in science, mathematics, and so on, undoubtedly, especially in mathematics. But at the same time, we should remember that in architecture, etc., similar achievements are there in Roman Empire, in Chinese dynasties, and even in Persian to some extent. For example, engineering feats of the Roman Empire, the aqueducts, the irrigation system in the ancient China. Okay. Technology, of course, in China was much more advanced. First printed book, first time use of paper, gunpowder, compass, civil service exams, census held. All these are go to China. Romans had other achievements like laws, engineering feats, bridges and roads and so on. So each culture, each civilization, high-level civilization, had certain achievements. There is, we also had, but there is nothing extraordinary about them. across fields. In some fields, we were ahead, especially in mathematics, in yoga, in health sciences, Ayurveda, etc. But in other fields, China was far ahead. On the other hand, there are some very important areas in which we were very weak, especially in strategic thinking. See, we had so many invasions right from Alexander onwards, but even Alexander is not mentioned in our sources. There is no advanced planning against invasions. There were only 3 passes on the northwest through which the invaders came. We could not block them also. Though after 700, this 8th century Qasim's invasion, these invasions are very brutal, extremely violent. Girls were carried away as slave girls. Yet we did not do advanced thinking against, on military strategy front. Not only that, we did not record very faithfully, historically, apart from Kalhan, we have very few objective records of what was happening. As I said, Alexander is not even mentioned in our sources. Even Chanakya does not mention Alexander, who came just a few years before him. Chanakya is very important as one of the rare political thinkers in India who focuses on how to make the state strong. But Chanakya has no concept of democracy. So our political thinking was not that developed as we see in Aristotle, Plato, and that tradition. So this notion of Vishwaguru is partially true. In some areas, no doubt, we were far ahead of others. Similarly, let's take this notion that India was a land of honey and milk and rivers and so on. Superbly rich. This has been picked up even by some recent politicians. After Magnus, this book, which calculated the GDP of the world and suggests that India's share was around 1/4. Now, this is again only partially true. See, the well-being of the people in any area is best measured by wheat wage. How much could a laborer purchase in terms of food in one day's wage? In Rome, we have a very famous Diocletian edict which lists wages and prices and all, and we get to know that around unskilled labor could purchase about 4 kgs of wheat in ancient Rome. In India, unfortunately, we don't have many precise records, but Akbarnama mentions prices, wages, etc. And if we convert them into modern units, because that is Bigha Ilahi, or and this silver coin of Akbar, and all that will have to be converted. And roughly, I made this calculation. I found that about 3 kgs of wheat could be purchased in an unskilled laborer's wage in a day. By 17th century in England, if you compare, same time, Mughal period, this comes to around 6 kg, 5-6 kg wheat in one day's wage was available to a worker. Because already, commercial revolution has happened in England and France. Agricultural revolution has happened. Some technology has brought in. And proto-industrialization has begun. So this early modern period, which corresponds with our Mughal era, has seen these developments and wage has risen. So I think that it's not important how many dinars were available to 50,000 Zat Mughal noble. How does that matter? Real issue is how much is the peasant left with after the harvest. As Irfanovi has mentioned, about 75% of the produce was taken away by the whole order of lower nobles, higher nobles, the state. The state took away 33%. That was standard. And the others took around rest 33%. Around 70% was taken away. And it is obvious from the fact that the Mughal army, central army was 5 lakh sawars. Whereas there was no standing army in Britain. Britain did not have a standing army. Just some palace guards. Whereas each Zabidar in India had a horde of latats. So this burden on the common man, I think, was much more, especially after the coming of the Turks. And this is in fact evident in the fact that most ancient sources, I think Mrityunjay will correct me, most ancient sources mention 20% as the tax rate. Whereas Akbar raised it to 33% and Alauddin Khilji, of course, took 50%. What a jump! What it meant for the common peasantry. How can we forget? And that is the reason why in famines, not lakhs, crores used to die. Shah Jahan's famine has been mentioned by Bernier, Aurangzeb's. Even Shah Jahan's time, there was a severe famine when Taj Mahal was being built. Deccan was, crores of people were dying. So this, I think, was a very prominent feature which should not be ignored when we say that India was very rich and so on and so on. Of course, India had a rich alluvial, large area of India is alluvial rich, and monsoon, it's blessed with monsoon. That is why the water table doesn't go down too much. It gets replenished and so on. And Babar, etc. have mentioned that, yes, as compared to Kabul, they found India very rich. But as compared to, say, early modern Europe or China, I won't assert too much that India was the richest. So these are two important claims to be, I think, modified. I won't say they are completely wrong, but they need to be modified. Now I will mention two claims where we see a lot of romanticization about Indian culture. Vikas, can you just change the slide? Please change again. Yes, yes, ahead. Yeah. Yeah, next one. Next. So what is romanticized about India? One is this notion of, we are a very harmonious culture with the ideal of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is partly true. How is it? How can it be proved? We rarely attacked any other country, and especially brutal attacks were not carried out by Indian kings, rarely outside India. Secondly, we are a culture, in fact, in which trees, rivers, everything is worshipped. We are a gentle people, it can be said. But on the other side, we shall also not forget that we have had not only caste system but also untouchability. Now there is some debate whether the caste system in ancient India was by birth or by profession or work, etc. I think it was by birth. There was no team sitting at any capital deciding by deeds who is a Kshatriya. There was no assessment method. It was obviously by birth, by and large, especially from the age of the Buddha onwards. And Fayan mentions this. He saw untouchability. Ibn Battuta mentions this. And our own, some incidents, say Eklavya's story, Shambhuk's story in Ramayana, and although Shambhuk's story is not there in Valmiki Ramayana, but I think in South Indian Ramayana it is mentioned. And Shabri, and there are instances which show that although, for example, Ram is shown as a great person who is not bothered by somebody's caste, but it also hints that the caste system was there and it was by birth. In fact, Gita mentions this notion of Varn Sankar, and Gita is very worried or concerned about Varn Sankar growing, that is, children of intercaste marriages. So it doesn't look upon that as a good thing. So that shows that caste system was there. So when we say that we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, this side also should not be erased from our notice. Similarly, this assertion that in medieval India, although there were invasions and so on, and there were very bloody battles, and women were enslaved or they committed jawhar, that side was there. But over time, a syncretic culture evolved. This is, again, partly true from Amir Khusro to Dara. Even at the level of elites, there was some attempt at syncretism and at the popular level, of course, the Bhakti and Sufi saints and so peers, and they are there in every nook and corner of India, and that proves that syncretism did evolve. But on the other, this again has a dark side. The kind of brutal, barbaric violence that happens in communal riots in India is a slap on this argument that we are a very evolved syncretic culture. So this is, again, has two sides, I would say, and should not be forgotten. Next slide. Now I come to some assertions about Indian culture which are valid but not often in the way they are presented. One is this notion of unity in diversity, and the other is continuity with adaptation. No doubt India is it is the oldest continuous civilization. Mesopotamia and Egypt, which are older than India, have petered out. But Indian tradition that evolved from Vedas, and maybe we don't know enough about Indus Valley, but maybe from there, certain features are continuing till this day. Although changes have come with time, I'll just come to that. There are important mutations even within Hinduism, but there is a continuous tradition also. And this has happened only because we have had a remarkable trait of adaptation. The best example of adaptation is democracy. Very few third world countries or countries outside the West have been able to adapt democracy to their native tradition. India has been a very successful democracy, and that shows how even caste plays a role in the survival of our democracy, because it helps in mobilization. So we have adapted our tradition to suit a very modern feature and very important feature of modern life, that is democracy. Similarly, education, social reform movements. See, modernity was a big rupture, colonial modernity. But there was a positive side, how, unlike, say, Islam, Hinduism, and even Sikhism, in India we launched a series of social and religious reform movements and were ready to change with time. We changed patriarchy, we attacked the untouchability, caste system, etc., at least at the level of laws and institutions. So this adaptation has been there. In fact, the peaceful, overthrow of zamindari in India, there were hardly any violence. We abolished zamindari. Even to overthrow one zamidar in one village can be a very bloody affair. But this happened on this scale. Similarly, the laws that we brought against patriarchy and for women's rights, there was hardly any resistance. So this adaptation we have shown over time. And again, even in the medieval period, this is a very interesting question to throw. Wherever Islam went, the whole existing culture was changed and Islamized, except in India. And of course, Europe. In Europe, of course, it was violently thrown out. Spain and then Eastern Europe. But in India, Islam stayed. It in fact conquered also. But Hinduism survived with some, restriction. Indian culture survived. And this is very remarkable in light of the fact that even Dalits did not convert to Islam despite incentives. Now, let me raise this question. Why do you think Dalits did not convert despite incentive and despite facing untouchability? Anyone in the online group would like to answer this question? Why do you think Dalits did not convert? See, my answer is that there is an aesthetic reason to this. The Bhakti movement saved this level of conversion, and the appeal of Ramayana, our bhajans, etc., their aesthetic quality retained them within the Hindu fold and kept them in the Hindu fold. This could be one explanation. So this is, the story of adaptation in Indian culture and how it has managed to survive both the Islamic entry and the subsequent colonization and today's globalization, etc. I'll just come to this point of globalization again. Let's look at this assertion about unity in diversity in India. As I was saying, this is again an example of a claim that has some truth, but not in the sense that it is often conveyed. No doubt there is a lot of diversity in India. This is not surprising. India is almost a subcontinent. There will be diversity across regions, languages, etc. But what is remarkable about Indian diversity is that within a city, within a village, there will be so many diverse traditions according to caste, religious groups, etc. So this is remarkable. Uniformity has not been imposed, say, the manner in which church imposed, say, in Europe. What about unity? See, no doubt there are some threads which bind India together. But we are not going to focus on the nation state, the threads which flow from our government. Of course, we celebrate 26th January. Of course, we have the same education system. We have fought the wars all practically in a united manner, more or less. We vote in general elections as a country. So, and of course, above all, we had the freedom struggle in which large proportion of Indian population across communities, less so amongst Muslims in the later phase, but by and large, across languages, across castes, gender, even religious divide, people participated in the freedom struggle. It was a united struggle to a large extent. Maybe behind different parties, that's a different thing. But we were against the British, we were together. and for an independent India, except what Muslim League managed to do at the end. So these are, this is political unity. But we are talking about cultural unity. What are the features which are shared across India and are not found outside India? This is not easy to answer. See, there are some features of which we are very proud, and we say that this is what makes Indian culture. Our family system, for example, respect for elders, the joint family system, the welcoming attitude towards guests. These are even celebrated in our songs, etc. This is what great Indian culture is, and it unites us. But if you look at it deeply, these features are pan-Asian. They are not just Indian. See, Europe is very individualistic. In individuals' affairs, even the family does not interfere too much. Forget about neighborhood, community, caste. They don't have caste. But even professional guilds, etc., they don't interfere. Individual in matters of marriage, independent home, and so on. In personal matter, in what profession to pursue, they have an individualist streak. Whereas in India, the community, the family, it has a say, or had. Now it is changing, of course. It had an important say. People could not, for example, pursue a profession outside their caste. They could not marry on their own choice. So, but these are also in China. Same respect for elders, Japan. These are pan-Asian features. They are not Indian features. What is peculiarly Indian? Just reflect. What is pan-Indian, found all across India and not outside India? One is the caste system. Caste system is uniquely Indian, and it is in every pore of India. From even in Kerala, I was once talking to a very senior scholar who is a Malayali, and he was saying Kerala is very different. But I asked him, do you have Brahmins? Do you have Dalits? Do you have untouchability? It's the same thing. It's a part of the same cloth. So this is pan-Indian. Even in Indian Islam, caste is there. Even in Indian Christianity, caste is there. And caste, of course, you mean that you follow a profession according to your ancestors. You don't marry outside your caste. You marry outside your gotra. And you, in earlier times, now of course it has changed, you don't sit with people below your caste rank, etc. So this caste system is pan-Indian, across languages, across religious groups, and across classes. But this is the negative side. What is good about Indian unity? I would say one is our freedom struggle that united us, and its memory unites us still. And Bollywood is another thing which unites India. Even where Hindi is not spoken, Bollywood songs, Bollywood stars, they find the same appeal. These are some threads of unity that bind India culturally, not to speak of the election, state, etc. That's a difference, because that is imposed from above. This is from below. So now let us look at some dark sides of Indian culture. One, of course, I said caste system. Then our patriarchy. Though patriarchy is universal, but from medieval times after the Turkish invasion, I think patriarchy got intensified in India. Parda is not visible in Mahabharata, or child marriages are not evident in ancient sources. These seem, in modern times, in the colonial era, many people fought against these evils. Obviously, when did they come? Till the eve of the Turkish invasion, Khajuraho was being built. But after this, Parda comes in. Jauhar comes in. So I think patriarchy got intensified during the medieval period. And another dark side is that we lack civic consciousness in a big way. Yeah.
Jawahar is dark side of this Indian culture.
Yeah, that women had to commit Jauhar to escape certain atrocities. No, this intensified. Although Sati is mentioned in ancient sources, but if I am not correct, Jauhar is perhaps not mentioned. Medieval. I'm saying in ancient it was missing. Sati is there in ancient sources also. Harsha's sister was going to commit sati. So we have that mention. But it was, these tendencies got, I think, intensified during the medieval period. Third, I was saying lack of civility or civic culture. Civic culture means that you don't give too much weight to identities given by birth, and rather give weight to your professional associations and groups that you join by choice, okay, to serve a certain cause or to pursue a profession. These are civic associations, whereas ethnic identities are by birth. So the latter are given much more weight. For example, even in elections, we see people. Caste is not the only factor, but caste and religion for certain groups are one of the important considerations. Secondly, we don't fight for social justice so much. This is a major, I think, blemish. See, in ancient Rome, there were slave rebellions. There was slavery, but also slave rebellions. Spartacus, Solon. And they redistributed after the rebellion, they redistributed the land. In India, we had untouchability. But there is no major Dalit rebellion in India. I think ancient professors will correct me. But we don't have, except this notion of Kali Yuga, one Bengal rebellion. But there is not a Dalit rebellion. The change comes with 17th century. In 17th century, I think it is very noteworthy that we have not only Marathas and Rajputs and, they are fighting against the Mughal Empire, but Satnamis, Jats, the lower peasantry or the smaller landlords, they are also fighting for the first time. This has not happened in Indian history by and large. There is one mention of a rebellion under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but that is again of the zamindars, not the peasantry. The first peasant rebellions we hear only in the 17th century. And of course, social reforms, etc., which we see with the colonial period, they are not there in our ancient tradition. Even Buddha, for example, his focus is desire leads to sorrow. So enlightenment means that you limit your desire for nirvana. That he was fighting the caste system or patriarchy, this is not much in evidence. He only reluctantly allowed women to later on join Sangha, but we don't have a tradition of social reform agenda. And of course, within Islam, there is very little. So this is, I think, one more gap which we need to attend to. Now let us look at what are the major changes that have come. Till now I was talking about broad similarities over time and over space which bind culturally India. But there have been mutations also. The first mutation is, of course, the disappearance of Indus Valley. And today it is under dispute whether the Vedic civilization was contemporary with Indus Valley or it came later. This has become a matter of dispute today. Whatever the case, there is a major rupture because Indus is an urban civilization and Vedic seems to be a rural, tribal culture and their ideals. A major rupture comes again with the Vedanta. Vedanta is considered sometimes to be, continuity of Vedas. But if we mean by Vedanta Upanishads and Brahmanas, and they are actually reflecting a very different culture from Vedas. Because now the notion of the word as fake or a dream, Maya, comes in. Vedic rishis are making richas or these hymns which are celebrating the word. They are praying to the gods to get more sons, to get more better harvest and so on. They are not saying the word is Maya. But with Upanishads and the Vedanta, this notion of word being Maya and the aim of life being submergence in the supreme consciousness. This comes in. Third rupture, I think, comes with the coming of the Buddhism and Jainism, etc. And then Islam, Sufi and Bhakti movements. And the biggest rupture, of course, comes with colonial conquest, which brings in its wake the principles of modernity. What are these principles? Firstly, rationalism, humanism, and individualism. These are completely at odds with the Indian traditions, whether Islamic or Hindu, Sanatan, whatever. Why? Because humanism says that this life is important and we can make this life beautiful through institutions, reforms, and so on. Whereas our religions say this life is either Maya or unimportant. You prepare for the other life. Okay? So this is complete rupture of humanism against tradition. Similarly, rationalism. What is rationalism? It's not just the use of reason. Reason has been used even by the hominids. When they made tools, they were using reason. But when you pedestalize reason above tradition and above elders' dictates and say what is right according to reason, that we should follow, not what the tradition has prescribed. This attitude is rationalism. This came with modernity. Similarly, individualism is completely at odds with our tradition in which community has a greater say. What is individualism? That each individual should take his or her own decisions. Community, even family, should not interfere too much with the individual's decisions. This is individualism, which comes with Western modernity. Okay? Our tradition was no, what elders say, what your caste panchayat says, that is also very important. So this is colonial rupture, the seventh major rupture in our long tradition. But as I said, we have adapted to them. Our tradition has not died down. humanism, rationalism have come in. We are producing best scientists, engineers, software programmers, etc., etc. But our family stays. It has not disappeared. Even our joint family has not disappeared, because mama, chacha, everyone has certain role to play in rituals, in a wedding. People get together. Those traditions are not dying out. This is the difference between China and India. Maoist China made a complete rupture with its tradition. But we have adapted. We have incorporated elements of modernity, but our tradition also survives. But there are certain, now globalization has come in. What is globalization? Globalization means greater and greater integration of entire humanity. Not only economically, we are importing cars from Germany, or say cheap goods from China, and etc. Whole economy is getting globally integrated. But even NGOs, migration is happening on a large scale. And above all, ideas, our food. We don't eat just Indian food today. Chinese also, Western also. So our recipes are changing. And the good thing is that India is also contributing to something good to this globalization. What has India contributed? Number one, yoga. Number two, our healing traditions. Number three, our own version of democracy, which is being studied by so many countries. And also our, above all, family, which is a great example for many cultures which are seeing a complete breakdown of family. So we are also, and our software engineers, of course, in Silicon Valley, etc. So we are also making a contribution to this globalization. But certain negative things are also coming in with globalization, which are damaging. One is consumerism. Another is high divorce rates and the damage to our family. And of course, environment, damage to the environment, which was very alien to our own culture. Because, as I said, we have in fact worshipped trees and rivers, etc. But now we are seeing this onslaught, which is the negative side of globalization. In this light, I think media personnel and teachers have a big role to play. Globalization should be such that we borrow from each other their best and offer our best to them. And this has to be taught to the younger generations. And today we have this new media technology. Also, leisure time will grow with robotics, etc., coming in. And the health revolution, that is biggest change which the next generation will probably see, will be a major revolution in health. Because organ transplant, gene therapy, etc., is going to really, that will be the biggest revolution which humanity will see. In preparation for that, along with protecting the world from nuclear war and the virus attack, etc., those major risks are there. Also, this big battle against negative side of globalization, the values, this teachers have to fight. And I think our social media is an aid in that. While there are negative streams in social media, but if teachers and committed thinkers, etc., take it upon themselves, we can also use these tools to make the process of globalization really rich and fulfilling for humanity. So I'll end here and invite any questions or comments or criticisms. Most welcome. Thank you.
Sir, in current scenarios, do we find this diversity as to be a strength or to be a problem for India? Because if you look at the current ongoing I always find this diversity to be very beautiful, to be very honest. So diversity, when it comes to the cultural aspect, and when it comes to be, even when the communities are being open to know more about each other, it's very beautiful. It's very helpful. It's very, a positive aspect for any nation to survive, to, even get popular, as we have, and this is the reason that India has been still very popular. But when it comes, because nowadays we see that the communities are been becoming quite, extreme. The extremism has reached to a negative end. The extremism is already a negative term. So sometimes I myself, really feel that when we talk about this diversity, it becoming a problematic thing, especially when we are been moving on the path of development. So this diversity is a bane or it's a blessing now. It's becoming a question mark. I'm really, confused in that aspect.
Thank you, Mamtaji. This is a very pertinent question, also which perhaps puzzles a lot of people. My answer would be that by and large, unless diversity is accompanied by prejudice, hate, or disharmony, diversity is good. The only thing is that amity should exist between diverse entities. Respect should exist. Diversity is always good. Even, evolution has happened because of diversity. I was just once asked this question to AI, to ChatGPT, sorry. I was puzzled, reflecting on this. Why did evolution of the human race from hominids to Homo sapiens, the entire evolution has happened in Africa? Why? What was Asia doing? Why did America not have? What was happening in Europe? Why did entire evolution? This is 5 million years. Earliest hominids are 4 million years ago. Homo sapiens 4 lakh years ago. And Homo sapiens 70,000 years ago. This whole, after Homo sapiens has come, they start moving out of Africa. Why in Africa only? And I think the ChatGPT gave the right answer. One, that Africa actually had, this was in the period of Ice Age. So Africa was less cold than Europe, China, etc. One was that. And secondly, Africa has a lot of diversity a lot of biodiversity. So maybe the gene exchange was much better, and it led to slow evolution from primates to hominids to Homo sapiens. This happened only in Africa. So diversity is good always, but the only thing is, and here I think teachers' role is very, very important. See, one of the big dangers hanging over or pulling down our country is communal disharmony. We have to create communal harmony at any cost. This does not mean lying to each other or this syncretism argument that everything was donkey at the lower level. No, we have had communal riots, we have had prejudices, we have had masses carried away sometimes by, in retrospect it looks so stupid. Mopla movement, Hindus massacred. Why? Because Caliph is being overthrown. And ultimately it was not the British the Turks themselves overthrew the Caliph. But this kind of prejudices we have had in Lahore, Rawalpindi, what all happened in 46, 47. So as teachers, I think is one of the biggest roles we have, that at any cost we have to promote communal harmony. Diversity will never be bad. It will only enrich us. Provided we have amity and respect for each other.
I think, sir, this communal harmony is now becoming a problem worldwide, because when we have been going through the many international newspapers, the whole Europe crisis has now been evident in front of everyone. And the recent protests which had happened in London, and then the other community has come up in opposition and declaring for the Sharia law in itself is a example. So again, that proves my point that the Western country, which was obviously culturally very distinct, and now the migration has created it. It is as a melting pot of so many cultures, and now they are not being able to handle it. But we are being very different from them is because we are already an existing country where these cultures are being having an indigenous root. We have been evolving from here. So the so-called, ये जो शब्द है ना सहिष्णुता, ये तो हमारे पास था ही, इसमें तो हमको डाउट है नहीं. लेकिन अभी वो एक्सट्रीमिज्म या ये कह लीजिए कि एक दूसरे के वो एक वो कौन सा एक वर्ड है जो वेल डिस्क्राइब कर सकता है, दैट इज मिसिंग. बट द डाइवर्सिटी इज बिकमिंग अ क्वेश्चन मार्क नाउ. ये रिसर्चेस में अब आने लगा है, या पता नहीं लोग देखना चाहते हैं नहीं देखना चाहते.
वर्ड डिफरेंटली, इट इज नॉट डाइवर्सिटी व्हिच इज अंडर क्वेश्चन, इट इज prejudice and hate. Diversity itself is good. Let there be both Islam and Hinduism. That is the strength of Indian cricket team. That is the strength of Indian science and so on. In fact, we are very lucky in Indian Islam. Not only some syncretism has been there. Amir Khusro, Dara, a beautiful tradition has been there of respect for other religions also. But in contemporary India, there are so many Muslims who are speaking against bigotry. This we don't see in so many other lands, and we are lucky for that. We have to promote this, that we should be ready to change without any conceit or arrogance, and respect each other, whatever we think is right or bad, that doesn't matter. Respect for every human being. Even for a criminal, it should be there. This doesn't mean criminal doesn't have to be punished. Of course, he has to be punished, because to set an example. But inside us, there should be no hate. But I really thank you for your question, because reality is that even Gandhi failed here. Gandhi succeeded against the British to a large extent, although independence came not just because of Gandhi, but Gandhi made a big contribution to independence struggle. But against Jinnah, he failed. On this question, even Gandhi failed, we shouldn't forget. And he himself admitted that he has failed, and that's why he was very heartbroken. But this is what we have to find a solution to. As teachers, I think it's a big responsibility before us. Without falling into pseudo-secularism or appeasement of, minority bigotry. Minority bigotry is also there. But we'll be able to fight it only if we shelve majority bigotry first. That is the thing.
Sir, I just want to make an addition.
Yeah.
हम सिर्फ अब सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर नहीं दे रहे हैं. At present, if we look around the world, मुझे लग रहा है major nations के political leaders भी अब Indians ही हो गए हैं. So I now used to tell my students that I think if it's all about migration and grabbing the important positions around the world, Indians are everywhere. हम हर जगह हैं. और दुनिया को लगता है Indians से खतरा होगा, क्योंकि look at Canada, we are there. Look at Australia, we are there. Look at Tulsi Gabbard, she's been holding a very prominent position. UK का Prime Minister was an Indian. So even NASA में Sunita Williams has an Indian origin, but we should not. एक तो हमारा problem ये है कि somebody who have moved out and moved out for a very long time. But we still keep on, connecting our, pride and honor with the origin and ethnicity with that person. I think that credit goes to that country who has given that, all the resources and opportunities to that particular person. अगर हम वो avail नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, so we need to, have a introspect our own, nation, and look out that we are not being able to provide all these things. Because honestly, the current data has also been saying so, that it is a premium, upper educated middle class which has been migrating at a very fast pace. And it's all because the opportunities are being not available here. There is no scope of flourishing. There is no scope of, you know, developing in such manner or aiming for such positions which they can get through, which they can get in others, these Western oriented countries, where they value these systems. तो वो तो हमारा नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी हम ये कह सकते हैं कि इंडियन का ये अचीवमेंट्स बड़ा बड़ा है कि यहाँ नहीं तो कहीं और सही, लेकिन हम लोग हर जगह हैं और हर जगह अच्छे से हैं.
This raises two very interesting questions. Why have Indians done so well abroad? And why Indians don't do so well in India? So what are the answers? Do you have answers? Why have Indians done so well in USA, UK, Europe?
मैं पर्सनल उस पे लेवल पे बता सकती हूँ, बिकॉज a major chunk of my family is now been migrated. So the point has been, whenever they are the kind of, when they have succeeded and they have been looking for good jobs, they got better jobs with better paying or better salaries in abroad. A. But before that, when they have been looking for advanced education programs, it was not been available in this country. For example, we still do not have any program related to financial engineering. We have engineering colleges, but we do not have any such course, financial engineering.
Yeah.
And what is financial engineering? It has multiple aspects, but one of such aspects is that where you get trained to tell any organization where to invest your money, how much to invest your money in particular projects.
Yeah.
So it's one of the aspects. So there are many such courses which are still not been there. More of, if you get well educated, if you have, even have desired education in this country, then the positions are not been available where you can get payoff. So then obviously you move out. And now the problem become, more complex because of increasing pollution, social securities, which we are been failing to provide to our, people, and the medical facility. And I would rather say medical facilities are better over here as compared to abroad. They are very expensive. People still have been coming to India to get their ailments treated.
Yeah.
So वो तो issue नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी मतलब बीमार होने की
Our education is lacking.
लैकिंग और बीमार होने की यहाँ पे जो रेशियो है वो बहुत हाई हो गई है सर. आप पिछले एक हफ्ते से दिल्ली का देख लीजिए. I have a family member who had a open heart surgery. जब तक वो इंडिया में होती हैं वो बहुत दवाइयाँ खाती हैं, सर के दर्द से जूझती हैं. And when she is in another Western, some European country, जहाँ पे वो रह रही हैं, she is not taking any medicine. So the environmental factors are been increasing your medical problems.
Pollution is much less.
And उससे भी सर सबसे ज़्यादा problematic जो है, आज का एक educated जो generation खड़ा हो चुका है, they does not want their next generation to be pressurized. They are looking for other opportunities for them. When I say opportunity, it's not only the opportunity in terms of career, it's also in terms of living their life happily. वो happiness नहीं है. तो यहाँ पे बच्चा सुबह उठता है, स्कूल जाता है, आता है कि हमारे खुद के शहर में इतने तो हमारे यहाँ प्लेग्राउंड्स नहीं है जितने हमारे यहाँ शादी के बैंक्वेट्स होते हैं. So your society is also, telling you that what they want. They want, the agenda is शादी कर लो, the agenda is बच्चे कर लो, the agenda is तुम एक प्लेयर बन जाओ. वो नहीं है. And then you always keep on, being very cranky over it and all the time creeping. अरे हमारे देश में गोल्ड मेडल्स नहीं आते. आएंगे कैसे? आपने क्या कंट्रीब्यूशन किया, क्या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर खड़ा कर दिया उसके लिए? तो वो भी एक एस्पेक्ट है.
Very true. Mrityunjay was saying something.
ममता जी जो बातें कर रही हैं, तो मतलब वो सब बातें जो बातें उनसे मैं एग्री करता हूँ. लेकिन उसमें एक बात और है तो उसमें एक बात मैं और ऐड करना चाहूँगा कि जो विदेश जाना चाहते हैं, विदेश जाना पसंद करते हैं या चाह रहे हैं, करियरिज्म की बात है, इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट की बात है, हेल्थ इश्यूज की बातें होंगी, बहुत सारी बातें, बहुत सारे कारण हैं. एक कारण और है और सीधे मेंटालिटी से भी उसका संबंध है, जो कि आप बात कह रहे थे, वो है इंफीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स की बातें. वो बातें भी हैं कि दूर का सुहाग होता है, वो बातें भी हैं कॉलोनाइज माइंडसेट की बातें. विदेश से पढ़ करके आया है वो जरूर बहुत अच्छा होगा, विदेश से नौकरी करके आया है बहुत अच्छा इसका एक्सपीरियंस होगा, ज़्यादा वो स्किल्ड है, ज़्यादा
कॉम्प्लेक्स है।
तो ये जो कोलोनाइज्ड माइंडसेट है और ये जो इसके कारण जो इन्फीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स हमारे भीतर जो आया है, तो हम और हम अपने
बट
आप को
Mrityunjay, why do Indians do so well abroad?
So why do Indians do so well abroad?
हाँ, हम इंडियंस बहुत ज़्यादा
Sir,
कोलोनाइज्ड
इसके
हैं।
3 कारण मैं बता रही
हाँ
हूँ.
हाँ yeah.
Sir, एक, they are being very hardworking as compared to the Europeans in terms of they can work from longer hours. The Europeans are being grown up with this mindset. that there is a
Weekend
fixed
is off.
time. हाँ. तो वो एक्स्ट्रा काम कर सकते हैं and multiple jobs at a time. More of. Second, the Indians have been born and they have been, I would rather not say born, but the Indians have been trained since they have been born with the habit of saving. Saving for the unforeseen, future, or for the old age. और उसमें भी वो saving का क्या है? Saving then making a lot of collection of materialistic things. When I say materialistic, इसमें 2 चीजें हैं सर, आपका घर,
माइक दे दो।
आपका घर और आपका वो ज्वेलरी, ये वो कैश। तो वो घर, ज्वेलरी, कैश, तो ये दूसरा आपका बड़ा एस्पेक्ट है।
और तीसरा जो इंडियन का सब माइंडसेट है, विच आई थिंक दिस इज समथिंग वेयर एवरीवन शुड एक्सेप्ट इट एंड शुड लीव इट. इंडियंस गिव वैल्यू टू एजुकेशन एंड दे स्पेंड अ लॉट इन एजुकेशन. आप आज भी देख लीजिए, मैक्सिमम एक मिडिल क्लास आदमी भी या एक गरीब आदमी भी पूरा भरपूर कोशिश करता है अपने बच्चे को पढ़ाने के लिए. वो वहीं पे रुक जाता है व्हेन हिज कैपेसिटी इज नॉट टू गिव हिम दैट सपोर्ट. अदरवाइज दे ट्राई देयर बेस्ट टू गिव एजुकेशन टू देयर किड्स, टू देयर चिल्ड्रन.
वेरी ट्रू. मैं इसमें ना एक चीज़ ऐड करूँगा जो तुम्हें अच्छी लगेगी. एक तो मजाक के लिए कहूँगा कि हम में ना आर्यभट्ट का कुछ डीएनए है जो हम इतने अच्छे इंजीनियर्स वगैरह प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं. पर ये तो खैर मजाक की बात होगी. हाँ, एक बता लूँ और फिर तो बताना. हाँ बताओ.
क्योंकि वो बेस्ट लोगों को ही लेते हैं.
वो ममता को अच्छा लगेगा.
So actually you are asking that why Indians are more successful there in abroad. The point that I see is the most of the people who reach abroad are best of the minds from our country. That is why they are successful. अगर कोई कॉमनर्स जाने लगे ज़्यादातर वहाँ पर, अगर उनको एक्सेप्टेंस मिल गई, I don't think कि वो फिर इतना रेशियो आएगा, इतना.
सर मैं इसका एक रीज़न देना चाहूँगी, क्योंकि मैं ये मना नहीं कर रही द बेस्ट ऑफ द माइंड्स आर नॉट बीन गोइंग अब्रॉड. आई एम इन फैक्ट सेइंग दैट द बेस्ट ऑफ माइंड्स आर नॉट बीन रिटेन्ड इन दिस कंट्री बिकॉज द अपॉर्चुनिटीज आर नॉट बीन देयर. मेरी फैमिली में सर बेस्ट ऑफ द माइंड्स ही गए. ऑल आर IITians, सम ऑफ द 2 आर डॉक्टर्स and the other one was being the last who just about to migrate is a software engineer handling all the oil companies around the world. प्रॉब्लम सर दूसरा जो मैं ये कहती हूँ कि इंडियंस वाई दे आर बीन मूविंग अब्रॉड. आप सर 80s के दशक से देखिए, हम पंजाब में अगर देखते हैं माइग्रेशन, सर वो माइग्रेट क्यों कर रहे हैं? बिकॉज ऑफ दी ऑब्वियसली वी नो द रीजंस वाई दे हैव माइग्रेटेड टू कनाडा. लेकिन कनाडा और यूके के एक बार दर्शन करने के बाद, चाहे इंडिया में तो वो सर क्राइसिस हमेशा तो नहीं रहा ना. द एट्रॉसिटीज विद द सिक्स हैव फेस्ड ओवर देयर, इट हैड स्टॉप्ड आफ्टर अ टाइम एंड even the Punjab has been into a peaceful phase for a very long time after that. But still the migration has been going on. Look at the Gujaratis, उनके साथ तो कोई problem ही नहीं था ऐसा. Why the Gujaratis have gone to US and UK? Why they have been migrating? So because यहाँ पे ऐसा नहीं है, ये सारे ये जिनके मैं बोल रही हूँ Gujaratis are very good businessmen. और अगर हम सिख की बात कर रहे हैं, so they are not very great mind. बट ऑल वर बीन वेरी सक्सेसफुल.
बट एंटरप्रेन्योरियल.
हाँ, लेकिन वहाँ पे जाके सब सक्सेसफुल है क्योंकि हार्ड वर्किंग है. चाहे बेशक वहाँ का लेबर क्लास को वही डिजर्व, लेकिन व्हाट दैट लेबर क्लास डिड सर, आज के टाइम में आप कनाडा का वीज़ा सेक्शन अगर खोल के देखें, दे क्लियरली से वी डोंट वांट वाइट कॉलर जॉब्स माइग्रेशन हियर. यानी डॉक्टर नहीं चाहिए, इंजीनियर नहीं चाहिए. द ओपनिंग्स आर ओनली फॉर द ब्लू कॉलर जॉब्स जो उनके फार्म में काम कर सके. क्योंकि जो 80s 90s के दशक में वहाँ पे जो लोग माइग्रेट हुए थे उनके बच्चे वो वाइट कॉलर जॉब्स के लिए वहाँ पे खड़े हैं. अब वो ओपनिंग नहीं है वहाँ पे, अब वहाँ पे फार्मर वाला ओपनिंग है.
नहीं, जो चाइनीज़ लेबर जाता है, फिलीपींस का जाता है,
हाँ.
मेक्सिको से जाता है,
हाँ.
वो इतना अच्छा नहीं करते. इंडियन ज़्यादा अच्छा, उनसे भी अच्छा कर रहे हैं, वाइट से भी अच्छा कर रहे हैं. उसका ना मेरे ख्याल से एक रीज़न और है, मैं सोचा था विकास मेंशन करेगा, वो है फैमिली. जो इंडियन फैमिली स्ट्रक्चर है और स्पेशली जो इंडियन मदर जो सेक्रीफाइसेस करती है, वो मेरे ख्याल से वर्ड में थोड़ा सा अलग है. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल ब्लैक बहुत ज़्यादा सिंगल फैमिलीज़ होती हैं, सिंगल पेरेंट फैमिलीज़ होती हैं, लोग छोड़ के चले जाते हैं, माँ भी छोड़ के चली जाती है. ये इंडिया में बहुत कम होता है. ये जो हमारा, मैं कह रहा था ना इंडियन, ये हमारे टॉपिक से लिंक करता है कि जो हमारी मेंटालिटीज़ हैं, जो रामायण वगैरह से हमारे फैमिली आइडियल्स आए हैं, जो फैमिली का हमारा स्ट्रेंथ है, वो शायद हेल्प करता है उस बच्चे को जब वो वहाँ पे इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में है या मेडिकल में है, उसको जो सपोर्ट मिलता है फैमिली का पूरा, वो मेरे ख्याल से वेस्टर्न पेरेंट्स भी नहीं देते अपने बच्चों को. और स्पेशली मदर अपने कैरियर वगैरह को सेक्रीफाइस कर देती है बच्चों की सक्सेस के लिए. तो ये एक मेरे ख्याल से फैक्टर है जो हमें एज देता है, जो उनसे कम्पीट करने में ये भी एक फैक्टर. और फिर आर्यभट्ट का डीएनए तो है ही.
जो कनाडा वगैरह में शुरू हुआ वो तो पंजाबियों का 1905-6 से शुरू हो गया और 13-14 तक तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया. तब आफ्टर द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर का एक लार्ज सेक्शन ऑफ द पंजाबी गुजरातियों का हिस्टोरिकली वो बहुत कनेक्टेड रहे हैं सिंस दे आर ट्रेडर्स दे यूज्ड टू बी. तो पूरा का पूरा उनका सिस्टम पहले से रहा. साउथ इंडियन का सर अभी क्या हुआ, मुझे ऐसा लगता है, मैं भी करेक्ट कि ये जो वहाँ का जो अपर कास्ट, सो कॉल्ड अपर कास्ट रहा, उसके पास चूंकि रिजर्वेशन वगैरह की वजह से बहुत अपॉर्चुनिटी उनके लिए थी नहीं. और एक सोशल टेंशन ने भी, जैसे यहाँ के लोग दूसरे शहरों में हैं.
We are not listening. Please use the mic.
Yeah. It's so nice to hear that you people are all interested. Thank
There
you.
have been historical reasons behind the migration of the Indians.
ये तो साउथ
Thank
इंडिया
you.
का
साउथ इंडियन में यार ऐसे माइग्रेशन में ये हुआ कि एक सोशल टेंशन क्रिएट हुई आफ्टर मूवमेंट लाइक
Dravid movement.
various Brahmins or other so-called upper caste, they migrated to seeking the better opportunity. I may be wrong. It is my just.
नहीं, यू आर राइट. कई फैक्टर्स हैं जिनमें हमारा जो खासतौर पे फैमिली बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. और मेरे ख्याल से हमें ये क्वेश्चन पे और भी ज़्यादा सोचना है कि इंडिया में क्यों नहीं इतना अच्छा कर पाते. तो यू सेड एजुकेशन, वन पॉइंट. हमारी एजुकेशन थोड़ी सी डिस्टोर्टेड है, थियोरेटिकल बहुत ज़्यादा है. अब एनईपी का मुझे ये पॉइंट अच्छा लगता है, ऑल दो उसमें कुछ वेगनेस है, लेकिन ये पॉइंट अच्छा है कि अप्रेंटिसशिप और प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज पर ज़्यादा जोर आने वाला है. हाँ, क्योंकि हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा इतना बच्चों को एल्जेब्रा वगैरह पढ़ाते हैं जो लाइफ में कभी काम नहीं आता स्कूल के अंदर, और बेचारे ट्यूशन्स जाते रहते हैं. वो कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री पूरी चल रही है उस वजह से, जबकि उसकी ज़रूरत नहीं है, कभी लाइफ में काम नहीं आता. इतनी हिस्ट्री हम स्कूल में क्यों पढ़ाएं? वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री पढ़ाना बहुत है. अब सारी बैटल्स अकबर की, सारी बैटल्स अलाउद्दीन खिलजी की, ये सब पढ़ाने की क्या ज़रूरत है? तो ऐसा कुछ प्रूनिंग होना चाहिए ताकि प्रैक्टिकल जो साइड है उस पर स्कोप, उसके लिए टाइम ज़्यादा मिल पाए. ये हमारे एजुकेशन में, जैसे तुमने फाइनेंशियल इंजीनियरिंग का एग्जांपल दिया, नोवल कोर्सेज जो आज रेलेवेंट हैं वो ज़्यादा आएँ, तो इसमें आप लोगों का बहुत बड़ा रोल होगा. हम भी कोशिश करते रहेंगे, लेकिन हम तो अब एयरपोर्ट लाउंज में हैं. आप लोगों का इनिंग बड़ा है और बल्कि अपॉर्चुनिटी भी है बहुत बड़ी. ये एक सुनहरा अवसर है मीनिंगफुल बनाने का एजुकेशन को. ये कॉलोनियल टाइम से हमारा जो बाबू क्रिएशन के लिए जो ये फैक्ट्रीज़ बनी थी, उसको करेक्ट करने का अब टाइम आ गया है. उसको लाइफ से रिलेट करें, जो लाइफ से रिलेटेड नहीं है उसको थोड़ा सा प्रून करें. वो भी ठीक है, ज्योग्राफी भी जाननी है, केमिस्ट्री भी जाननी है, लेकिन सारी मेंडलीव टेबल याद होनी चाहिए, सारे फिज़िक्स के लॉज याद होने चाहिए. ये 10th क्लास के बच्चे के लिए, जब वो इंजीनियरिंग सेलेक्ट कर ले तब पढ़ाओ, लेकिन स्कूल के अंदर इतना बर्डन क्यों? ये
दूसरा सर मुझे लगता है कि जो पहले किस प्रॉब्लम रही, लेकिन हिस्टोरिकली हम लोग इंडिया हैज बीन द कंट्री ऑफ हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स और हम लोग तो मान के चलते हैं कि बिफोर द एडवेंट ऑफ द यूरोपियंस वी हैव बीन कंट्रीब्यूटिंग टू एट लीस्ट 1/4 to 1/3 जीडीपी। तो आज़ादी के बाद हमने पता नहीं क्यों हमने प्राइमरी सेक्टर और सिर्फ सीधा उसे हमने सर्विस सेक्टर पे हमारा जो कंट्री हमारे जो यूएसपी थी हमारा जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का उसको हमने कई बार तो कास्ट के एंगल से कि चलो ये डिमीन करता है।
नहीं, हमने नेहरू जी ने ट्राई किया था लेकिन पब्लिक सेक्टर से। अब पब्लिक सेक्टर वर्क नहीं करता है, एलिफेंट्स हैं जहाँ कुछ काम नहीं होता है, तो वो लिबरलाइजेशन से हमने
चाइना ने किया सर,
चाइना ने लिबरलाइजेशन
1970 तक we are in the same pace।
हाँ, चाइना ने लिबरलाइजेशन पहले ले आए और अच्छे से लाए।
और अपने कम से कम जो उसकी जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जो उसका था शुरू से उसको उसने रिटेन किया, हमने उसको कहा।
नाउ लिंकिंग बैक टू मेंटालिटीज टॉपिक, सी आप लोगों के जो मैं चाहता था गौर करें कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम कम्युनल हार्मनी एक बहुत बड़ा जो हमारे को बिल्ड करना है नई जनरेशन में वो है सिविक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। हम लोग वोटिंग भी जैसे करते हैं बड़े इरिस्पॉन्सिबल तरीके से कई बार करते हैं, आइडेंटिटी के ऊपर खाली करते हैं, परफॉर्मेंस नहीं देखते, या क्रिमिनल्स को वोट डालाते हैं। अब शहाबुद्दीन इलेक्ट होता था ना, कभी नहीं हारा, जबकि उसने इतने ब्रूटल मर्डर्स किए थे कि मतलब इट्स हेयर रेजिंग। अब ये सिविक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी और सबको एक अच्छा प्रोफेशन सोसाइटी के लिए यूज़फुल ऐसा चुनना है और थोड़ा सा एक्शन लेना है अपने नेबरहुड में, अपने वर्क प्लेस में। कहीं अन्याय होता है तो उसके खिलाफ थोड़ा सा आवाज़ उठाएं, कतरा के बच के ना निकले। ये है सिविक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। ये हम इंडियंस में बहुत वीक है। हम अपनी कंट्री में अच्छा नहीं करते, बाहर अच्छा करते हैं क्योंकि वहाँ पर रूल ऑफ लॉ है, तो हम लोगों की टैलेंट बहुत फ्लरिश करती है वहाँ पर। यहाँ पर रूल ऑफ लॉ नहीं है, सिविक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी से ही आएगा। तो ये हमारे को अपने स्टूडेंट्स में थोड़ा सा क्रिएट करना होगा। उसके लिए गाइड टीचर्स का रोल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। मेरे ख्याल से अब यहाँ एंड करते हैं। अगर ऑनलाइन पूछ लेते हैं अगर किसी का कोई क्वेश्चन है। अगर और
नहीं, सवाल नहीं है।
ठीक है,
भाई साहब ने उधर मॉनिटरिंग कर रहा था वो लाइन का।
हाँ ठीक है। थैंक यू सो मच।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। धन्यवाद ज्ञापन की एक परंपरा है जिसका निर्वहन करने के लिए मैं यहाँ पर उपस्थित हूँ। आज के इस लेक्चर में, इस व्याख्यान में हमने बहुत सी नई बातों को सुना समझा, जिसमें कुछ ऐसी बातें सर ने हमें बताई जो अक्सर किताबों में हमें सुनने के लिए, पढ़ने के लिए नहीं मिलती हैं। तो एक जो थ्रेड सर ने हमें दिया है, थ्रेड, उस पर आगे बढ़ने की ज़रूरत है। जितने भी लोग यहाँ पर सुनने वाले हैं, अधिकतर टीचर्स हैं, तो मेंटलिटीज़ की, शेयर्ड मेमोरीज़ की, या जो ओरल परंपरा की, मौखिक परंपरा की जो बातें सर ने बताई हैं, उनसे संबंधित अपने ज्ञान के वर्धन करने के लिए, उन चीज़ों पर आगे चलने के लिए सभी उत्प्रेरित होंगे, ऐसा मैं समझता हूँ। सर बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आई एक्सटेंड माई हार्टिएस्ट ग्रेटिट्यूड। एंड सभी लोग जो यहाँ पर उपस्थित हैं, सभी गणमान्य लोग, ममता जी हमारी हेड, और अन्य स्पीकर्स, अन्य पार्टिसिपेंट्स, सभी लोग, शैलेंद्र पाठक जी सर, और हमारे टेक्नीशियंस विनोद जी और अनिल जी जो पूरे समय हमें यहाँ पर सहयोग देते रहते हैं, सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। सभी पार्टिसिपेंट का धन्यवाद।